Welcome back to my channel. My name is Saad from Fantasia Art and I'm a digital artist. In this video, I will show you how you can create an amazing art with these images. If you would like to work on these images yourself, I have provided the link to download them in the description below. If you are new at my channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell for more amazing Photoshop photo manipulation tutorials. First, let me show you the final result of this image. Then we will get straight into the Photoshop. And now let me show you the canvas size for this artwork. Go to File, New, and now here you can see size and resolution for this artwork. And you can change them if you want, but I am going to leave it as it is. And now go ahead, click on Create. I have already created this, so I'll hit Close. And now let's bring the background image to the Photoshop. And now here you can see that's a background image. And now hold Alt and make it a little bit bigger like this. And now drag it to the right. And I think I'm going to leave it there. Okay, now it's looking good. Let's leave it there. And now hit Enter on keyboard. And now let's drag another image into the Photoshop. And here you can see I have already made the selection of this cow to save time because I don't want to make this tutorial to be too lengthy. So I'll quickly show you how I made the selection. If you don't know how to make the selection, there's a tons of tutorials on YouTube you can watch. And let me quickly show you how I made the selection. First, you have to simply click on this object selection tool and then click on this cow or whatever you call it. And after making the selection, click on this mask icon at the bottom of the layer panel to create the mask. And then you have to fix these edges. To fix them, you have to simply double click on this mask icon on this cow layer. Here you can fix these edges, and first you have to click on the view, and here you can experiment with all these options and see which one is best work for you. I'm simply going to click on this overlay and now simply increase the opacity to 100%, and you can experiment with it and see how it's work for you, and just leave it there. And I'm going to increase it to 100%, and after that simply click on this refine here button, and then you can see these edges will get much better. And if there are some area left, then you have to simply click on this brush icon to select it and then paint on those edges to fix them, and you don't have to be too precise. After that, simply click on OK, and then you're good to go. After making the selection, simply make this cow a little bit bigger like this and place it where it looks good to you, and I'm going to leave it there. It's looking good to me there. So now let's drag another image into the Photoshop. And now here you can see that's a third image for this artwork. And again, and I use the same method to make the selection, and after that I just place it here, and it's looking good to me, and I'm going to leave it there. You can place it where you want, where it looks good to you, and just experiment with it. And now it's looking good to me. And now let's move on to the next step. Now I'm going to match the color and the brightness of these images to blend them together to make them look much more realistic. So now go ahead, click on Create. Go ahead, click on this half circle icon at the bottom of the layer panel, and now click on Curve Adjustment layer, and first make sure to clip it to the below layer by clicking on this icon. And now drag this line from here to make the highlight a little bit darker, and you can see it's getting dark. So let's make it a little bit darker here. I think it looks good to me, and you can just experiment with it and see. And now let's make the highlight a little bit brighter, and now make the shadows a little bit darker to give them a little bit of contrast. And now it looks good to me. Let's just leave it there. Okay, now let's match the brightness of this cow image. Now first, let's make this area a little bit darker. You can see it's a little bit too bright. So now go ahead, select this layer, click on this layer to select it, and again click on the curve adjustment layer, And now again, make it a little bit darker. Drag this line from here to make again the highlight a little bit darker. You can see it's a little bit too bright. And now drag down from here and from this area as well. And don't worry about it, it's a little bit too dark. So after that, I'm going to fix it. Okay, now it's looking good, and I'm going to leave it there, just there. And you can just experiment with it. And now hit Control plus I to inverse it, and simply select the brush. And make the brush size a little bit bigger, like this. Hold Alt and right click to make the brush size smaller and bigger, and increase or decrease the hardness of the brush, like this. And now let's choose the hardness 0% and make the brush size a little bit smaller. It's a little bit too big. And change the foreground color to white by pressing X key on the keyboard. And now let's paint to make this area a little bit darker. Just make sure to decrease the flow to 1%, or you could decrease the opacity as well if you want. And now let's paint. And now take your time to make this foreground a little bit darker. And when it looks good to you, just leave it there. And let's paint to make it a little bit darker. And now take your time to paint it. And now let's paint just some of the shadows of this person here, where he's standing. So make the brush size a little bit smaller, like this, and right click and change the brush shape to like this. And now make the hardness to 68%, or just experiment with it. And go zoom in and now you have to simply make the brush a little bit smaller and increase the flow. Okay, now it's looking kind of cool. Now you can see it's looking cool. Okay, this is looking cool. I don't have to paint too dark, and you can make this a little bit darker from here if you want. Just I'm going to leave it like this. It's looking fine. I don't have to paint too dark right now. And you can paint it even darker if you want. And now let's change the increase the flow of the brush and make it a little bit smaller, like this. And press X key on keyboard. And now make it a little bit brighter. It's a little bit too dark, I think. And now take your time to paint it. I'm just doing it quickly, so. And I just painted all these shadows like this. You can see here mask like this. And now take your time to paint it like this. I just painted all. And now you can see it's look much better. And now let's move on to the next step. And now let's match the brightness of this cow image with the background. So now click on this layer, and again click on this icon, and now this time click on curves adjustment layer, and drag down this line from here and make it a little bit darker. And make sure to clip it to the below layer by clicking on this icon, and take down even more to make it a little bit darker. Okay, now it's looking good. Let's leave it there. And now make the highlight a little bit brighter and the shadows darker to give the image a little bit of contrast. Okay, now it's looking good. Let's leave it there. And now select the brush by pressing the key on keyboard and change the shape of the brush to default like this. And now let's paint some highlights there. You can see it's get a little bit dark. So make the brush size a little bit bigger like this by holding Alt and right click and drag left and right to make the brush size a little bit bigger and smaller, and to move up and down to decrease and increase the hardness of the brush. Now let's paint some highlights. Make sure to change the foreground color to black by pressing X key on keyboard. And now let's paint some highlights. And again, take your time to paint these highlights, and you can see lights hitting from this direction, so I paint highlights this area. If you want, if you accidentally paint too much highlights and you want to erase them, simply change the foreground color to white and just make those areas a little bit darker. Okay, now it's looking good, and I'm going to leave it like this right now. It's looking good. And now let's match the color of these images to make them more realistic. And now again, click on this half circle icon at the bottom of the layer panel, and now this time click on hue and saturation, and first make sure to clip it to the below, and now check this colorize box, and now drag the slide a little bit to the right. And okay, now I think it's looking good here, so let's leave it there for now. And well, let's move this lightness slider to the left just a little bit, and here I think it's looking good. Okay, I would just leave it there, and so now move the saturation slider a little bit to the left. Let's see which looks good. Okay, just leave it there. It's looking good. You can see it's blending with the background. And now let's move on to the next image. And now let's match the color of this image. Again, click on this icon and click on hue and saturation adjustment there. And again, make sure to check this colorize box and click it to the below layer. And now let's move this hue slider a little bit to the right. Let's see which looks. Okay, now I'm going to leave it there. And now let's move this saturation slider to the left. And okay, it's looking good. Let's see what I can do with the lightness slider. Just a little bit. Okay, it's fine. And now you can see it's looking much better. And there's one problem with this image, and that's this tree. And now let's move this tree front of this cow. And now first hide this layer, and select this background layer, and select this marquee tool by pressing M key on keyboard. And now let's make a selection of this tree like this. And now hit Ctrl plus J to duplicate it, and drag this layer above this layer, and now visible this layer, and well, let's fix these edges, and now zoom in, and we have to erase these edges. Just simply select the eraser tool, or you can click on this mask icon and now select the brush by pressing B key on keyboard, and now increase the hardness to 90 to 95%. Okay, it's fine. And increase the flow to 100%. And now let's erase it. I'm just doing a little bit faster, and you have to take your time. First, make sure to change the foreground color to black, and now you can erase it. If you accidentally erase some areas that you don't want to erase it, just simply change the foreground color to white by pressing X key, or you can change it manually. And then just bring those area back. Okay, now you can see it's looking much better. Okay, it's looking fine. You have to just take your time to make it look much better. And you can see this area of the tree does not look good to me. If it's looking good, you can leave it as it is, but I'm going to change it a little bit. First, right click on this mask icon and apply the layer mask. Make sure that you have erased these edges correctly, then apply this mask. And now hold Control and and now select the marquee tool by pressing M key on keyboard, and make the selection of the string like this, and hit Control plus J and press V key on keyboard and drag it to the top like this. And now select the eraser tool by pressing E key on keyboard and make the brush size a little bit bigger, and make sure to decrease the hardness to 0%. Just erase so that it will blend with the whole image. Okay, now it's looking good, and I'm just going to leave it like this. And now let's make these shoes a little bit darker. You can see it's a little bit too bright. So click on this layer, and now click on this half circle icon at the bottom of the layer panel, and now click on the exposure adjustment layer, and now make sure to click into the window layer, and now move this slider to the left a little bit. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to leave somewhere there. Okay, it's looking good. And now hit Control plus I to inverse it. And now let's paint some shadows on his shoes. You can see it's a little bit too bright. And first, make sure to change the foreground color to white, and decrease the flow, and make sure to decrease the hardness as well. And now let's zoom in and paint on the shoes to make them a little bit darker. And so now take your time to paint on these shoes to blend with the whole image. And paint on those areas where you think light will not hit. Make them a little bit darker so it's look much more realistic. And now let's increase the flow a little bit to make this area a little bit even more darker. And now take your time to paint on those areas and make the image look much better. Okay, I think it's looking good to me, and I'm going to leave it like this for now. And now you have to simply hit Control Alt Shift plus E to merge all these layers into one, like this. Make sure you have click on the top of this layer and then hit Control Alt Shift plus E, and Now go to filter, mirror filter. It will take some time to load, so you have to wait just a bit. And here you have to click on the depth blur. Let's click on to enable it, and now you have to wait a little bit to complete this process. Okay, now drag it down, and now here you have to click on this, check this output depth map only, and now you can see this turn into black and white. It's like something like that. And now click on OK, and make sure to you have selected the new layer, and now click on OK. And now change the blend mode to screen, or you can experiment with all these blend mode and see which one is best for you. And I'm going to change it to the screen. And I think I have to first let me show you how you can paint the fog manually. It's not that hard. Simply select the brush by pressing B key on keyboard. First make sure to create a new layer by clicking on this icon, and now select the brush by pressing B key on keyboard, and make the brush set a little bit bigger, and change the foreground color to white, and then we'll click on OK. And now let's paint some fog. Make sure to decrease the flow to 1% and hardness to 0. And now let's paint some fog. Make the brush a little bit bigger like this. And now let's paint. And now take your time to paint the fog. And I'm going to quickly show you how you can paint. But you can see now you have to do it on your own. I hope you can do that easily. Make the brush a little bit even bigger, and you can paint it like that. Like this. And then don't worry, just paint everywhere where you want to paint, and in the end you can fix that. Something like this. And now you have to erase with the low opacity brush. Simply select this person image, and just you can erase it. And now you get the idea how you can paint. It's not that hard. Okay, now I'm going to delete this layer and select this one. And now here you have to simply decrease the opacity to, let's see where it looks good. Somewhere this place, I think. Okay, now it's looking good, and I'm going to leave it this, and you can see it looks amazing. So, and here you can see it looks amazing. And let's make the image a little more dramatic, and let's see how we can do that. I think, and here you can see it's a little bit too much fog on this person and on the face, on this skull face as well. So let's fix it. Now what you have to do is simply click on this half circle icon. No, sorry, this mask icon at the bottom of the layer panel, and select the brush, and make sure to change the foreground color to black by pressing X key on keyboard. And now let's erase the fog from those areas where you think it's too much. So zoom in, and again take your time to erase the fog from those areas where it's too much. So on the face, I think, and make sure to decrease the flow or opacity, and just erase from those areas. And now let's make the selection of the code. And now you can erase the fogs without worrying about the background. Erase from those areas where you think that fog is too much. And okay, now it's looking good. I'm going to leave it like this and just take your time to make the image look much better. And I think I have to erase the fog from the tree. It's a little bit too much here as well. So now let's make the selection of the tree. Erase the tree. First, hold shift and select these two layers and right click and merge these layers into one. And now simply hold control and make the selection. And now you can erase the fog from this tree. Oh, I'm sorry. First, make sure you have selected this mask layer from the fog, and now you can erase it. Okay, now you can see it's getting much better. And now take your time to erase it, make it look much more realistic. And you don't have to be too precise, just make the strip so it does not look fake. And it's looking good, I think. It's looking fine, so just leave it like this. Let's erase a little bit fog from this place. I think I have to paint some fog here. Okay, now let's leave it like this. So let's work on this person. First, we have to fix this camera and his head. You can't see them, so let's fix them. First, like now you have to hold control and make the selection. And again, make sure to select this mask icon on this fog view. And now again zoom in, and now you have to erase the fog from his hands and the camera as well to make them much more realistic. Make sure to change the foreground color to black. And now let's erase the fog from the camera. And now erase from this hand as well. And now take your time to erase it until it looks good to you. And for this tutorial, I'm going to leave it to something like that. It's looking fine. And you have to work on a little bit to make it much better. Now you can see it's looking much better, and with just a little bit work on it, and that's the reason you can paint it like that. Just take your time to paint it, and you can see it's looking much better. And now let's move on to the next step. Now let's see next what we can do. And now here you can see the image is looking much better. And now let's give the little bit tweaks to the fog to make it look dramatic. So now go ahead, click on this obstacle icon, and now click on, and this time click on color balance. Click on color balance, and here you can experiment with these sliders and see which one will best work for you. And now let's move this slider to add the cyan. And let's see. I think just a little bit to the left. Okay, I know it's looking good. Now I'm going to leave it there. And now let's move this slider to the green. And I think we should leave it there. And you can see it's already looking good. So now let's add the yellow as well. And okay, well, you can see it's looking much better. You can see before and after, and you can experiment with it and see. And now you can see there's one thing that does not look good, and I think that is this area is a little bit too bright. So now let's make it a little bit darker to blend with the whole image. You can see light is hitting from that side and it's too bright. So now go ahead, click on this icon, and then now this time click on curve adjustment layer, and then now drag this line from here to make the image darker. Drag it a little more. Okay, now I think just leave it there. Okay, now it's looking good. Just leave it there. And now hit Control plus R to inverse it, and now select the brush by pressing B key on keyboard. Then make the brush size a little bit bigger, and make sure to change the foreground color to white. And now let's paint on this area to make it a little bit darker. Just increase the opacity. It's too low, and now let's paint it. And now take your time to make this area a little bit darker. Let's decrease the opacity, and well, let's add some form. And now take your time to paint it. And you know, it will take some time to paint. And to paint on those areas where the light is not hitting, and you can see it's already getting much better. And now you can see I just finish these shades to make this area a little bit darker, and I just painted on this area as well to make the shadow tree a little bit, and you can see it's looking much better. And now let's do the final adjustment, and now let's add this far into the group. Hold Shift and select these three layers and hit Control plus G to add these lines to the group. And now let's move on to the final step. Again press Control Alt Shift plus O to merge these lines into one, and make sure you have selected this top group layer, and then hit Control Alt Shift plus E on keyboard, and now go to filter. Select this layer, and first you have to select this layer, and then filter, camera or filter, and you have to make just a little bit, and here you can see. And then now let's do the final adjustment here. And now you can experiment with all these sliders and see which one best work for you. And for now, let's just export the slider a little bit to the left here. Now let's add a little bit of contrast, and now you can see it's looking much better. And now let's maybe add some texture as well. And now let's play with the slider clarity, and you can see it's looking good. Just a little bit, not too much. Okay, now let's add a little bit bluish color to the whole image. Now click on, no, not this. Click on this color grading, and now let's add a little bit bluish first to the shadows, just a little bit, not too much. Okay,
Now let's add the blush to the highlight a little bit as well. And there you go. Now you can just look much better. And now let's click on OK. And now let me show you the final result of this image.